The agenda. Minutes of the October 8th, 2019 meeting. I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong one. I do that every time.
Minutes of the April 14 and 23.
Minutes of the April 14th, 2020 and the April 23rd, 2020 meeting. Policy for revision, EEE, school wellness, and the varsity cheer fundraiser.
Make a motion.
Have a motion to accept the consent items?
Question,
Have a second by Mr. Madison? Yes, ma'am.
could we take out the 23rd minutes and do them separate?
Ms. Freeman, I think.
It's yes or no?
I think I know what your reasoning is on it, and unless you see something that's totally wrong with those minutes, I don't see any need to waste the time on that.
I do, and it's either yes or no.
We have a motion to accept the consent items. We have a second to accept the consent items. We can vote on that, and at this point, that's the way the motion's been made.
Yeah, but that's why you call question. Anyway, okay.
All in favor? Opposed?
Abstain.
4-0-1. Dr. Gummy, would you mind looking to see if we have any public participation for us?
No.
Thank you, sir. Financials.
Okay, we are at 83.33% of our fiscal year complete at the end of April. And you can see we are looking good on our revenues. We've got 91.74% of our property taxes collected. These are the amended budget figures I'm using. I'm proposing the amended budget to you tonight, but you'll notice these budget figures match what I'm proposing. So this is what our actual, compared to our actual budget, will be. So the total revenues are 86.27% collected there compared to 83.33. So we're looking good on our revenues. On the expenditure side, we're at 78.77. So we are low on our expenditures, and that's a good thing. So we're looking good on that. Hoping that stays a little bit low. And on our balance sheet, we've got about $3.4 million in cash in the bank, fund equity of $2.565 million. You can see the summary we started with on the next page. 2.2 million, we've got 2.5 right now. So we are maintaining on our fund balance. On the SPLOST collection, surprisingly, our SPLOST was up to 61,000 in March, which is April, which would have been the March collection. So I don't know if those were some from February that maybe didn't get reported in March or what happened, but I expected that figure to be lower, and it actually went up. You can see it's higher than the previous 2 years' April, and if you look down on the previous SPLOST, it's higher than any of those amounts. Not sure what happened with that, but that's good for us. And that means we're not going to have quite as bad a recession as we thought. So those figures will probably drop in May, but right now in April we're looking good on our SPLOST. On the SPLOST summary, you can see that we got $224,000 in the bank at the end of April. You remember we paid our April 1st payment at the end of March, so that was already showing on last month's. So we've got 224 there. And our bond tax, we've got 277. And that gives us a total of 502, which is more than our October 1st payment. That's this year's, but next year's will be approximately the same. So we do have that October payment covered, and we're working on the April 1st payment, which includes the principal. So that is all looking good right now. So we'll see. On our capital projects, no change there, other than a little bit of interest income. We're still saving that money, trying to see if any other projects come up that we need to take care of.
Any questions from Ms. Bufford or Dr. Light on the budget? Okay,
Is this the amended budget?
Those were the financials.
those are the financials we're about to talk about. The amended
Okay.
budget is next. So, all right, we'll go ahead and move into the amended budget.
Okay. The first sheet you got. Do you have? Yeah, there you go. The first sheet is the proposed amended budget, and that gives you the summary. You can see we got about 12.5 in estimated revenues, 13.2 in expenditures, leaving us with a fund balance at the end of the year of 1.459 million. And if you look on the second page, that's where you can kind of see the details. This is, I tried to list some of the things that the board had already approved, so you could kind of see what had happened, and then also try to, this is matching back to the grants and trying to get everything in order for the end of the year. So I can go through and list each one, or if you want to just look down, if you got a question about anything, you can ask about that. But a lot of the changes were things the board had approved during the year. We just had never amended the budget, or things that were necessary because of changes.
Okay, the biggest one that I want to make sure I understood, on the second sheet at the bottom, we were sitting at the original ending fund balance projected being at 668,000, and now we're looking at the 1.4.
That's correct.
So,
That's correct. So the fund balance does look better than original. And part of that is because we ended up the year a little bit better than we had projected. I think I projected a 2 million and we had 2.2. So that's part of that. And then part of it is adding the impact aid and some of the other revenues that we got.
How much, okay, that 283,000 was impact aid?
Yes,
Okay. That was good.
yes.
And that's something we don't budget for every year. We take that out with the idea in case we don't get it, we don't want to plan on it.
We want to use their salaries and then not have it available.
So this, the ad accounting software conversion at 59,000, that was a one-time cost?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes. And that was something we did bring to the board to approve. So.
Right.
The adjustment on there, Mr. Chair, that says communication radios, is it paid out? What is that, 23,000?
Yes, that was the mobile radios that we bought. Remember, we talked about that we take part of that out of the transportation budget, so that's just putting that in that category.
Okay.
So everything in parentheses has been spent,
Yes, well, budgeted to be spent,
Yeah.
yes.
and not in parentheses
Is adding to the budget.
return.
Correct,
Right.
adding to the budget.
Okay.
If it's in parentheses, it's taken away from the budget. If it's not, it's adding to it.
in looking at the fuel and the reduction in fuel and bus repairs, that's anticipated savings from all of the school closure from that standpoint, online
Just
schooling.
trying to get it closer to the figure we think it would actually be.
Are these actual numbers?
No,
Just
that's-
estimated.
These are all estimations?
Yes,
on those type things.
yes. And some of them are actual if we've already spent it, but in that case, I'm just reducing it to more accurately reflect what we think we'll spend.
When you have, adjust the second one from the top, adjust grants to, that money is already,
That has been approved by the state or federal, yes.
that's
So
already
that's-
here?
We may not actually have it, but we will get it before the end of the year. Grants you have to spend and then draw it down, so.
Yeah.
I may not actually have it, but it is available for us to receive.
When you have employee replacement, what does that represent?
I'd have to look back and see specifically, but what that means is somebody left and we replaced them with another person.
Right, but it
Sometimes it
says
saves
only
us money,
7.
sometimes it costs us money, depending
Yeah.
on their experience. In this
Oh, it's
case,
saying it says $17,089.
right, so that was the net of their salaries and benefits for the
Is
replacements.
that one person?
No, it's probably several people. That's just whatever happened during the year that changed from the original budget.
But it doesn't say how many employees.
No, I didn't put that on there.
That would just be helpful for me. And it says add the textbooks.
Yes. That was CTA textbooks.
Now, when it says, Mr. Chair, add to repairs and maintenance of the old campus, what maintenance and repairs did we do to the old campus?
Good question.
I know that we replaced a door over there. I know that we worked on a roof over there that had a tree that was rubbing on it and was about to cause a hole, so I remember that. I know that we repaired a couple of, or worked on a couple of air conditioners. Trying to keep the GMC folks comfortable and dry.
So all of that you just mentioned came to $7,374?
I don't know that number exactly. I'm just telling you what I remember that we repaired over there. I have to go back and pull that for you.
It would be helpful, if you'll give us budget changes, that you give us the supporting documents to go along with it. Otherwise, it's just writing on a piece of paper with some numbers, with no documentation, which it makes it hard for those of us who wants to do the right thing.
This has been done though, right?
Yes,
So,
sir.
I mean,
Yes, sir.
it's done.
Yeah, but it was done, but it was never approved. We're just saying it now for the first time. Did you know all this had been done? Because I didn't. So
No.
maybe some of the board members knew and not all.
Don't you have a $10,000 spending limit?
I do, sir, on a lot of the items that are up there and the larger items. As an example, you hit on the accounting software. That was early.
Yeah, I remember that one. Thing is, regardless of whether or not he has a limit, he still has to report it, and it is taxpayers' money. So there should be an accountability. But I know that y'all run this business the way you decide to, so that's good. But it's not fair, nor is it right.
Can we look at the bigger picture here? I got a question for the future. As next year comes up, are we gonna have the same funding from the state, or how do we, is that?
Well, at this point, to be honest, we don't know that answer. And the governor talked again today. The earliest that the legislation is going to meet is June 11th. So at the June 11th meeting, they will discuss what that budget is going to be. And they've got time, they're going to take time to create a budget and to submit it out. Once they do that, then it goes to the state folks for Godot, and then Godot will decide how much we get. We don't know what we're going to get. We have been told to project a reduction of 14%. However, we don't know that that's for sure, and I think that was a week and a half ago that we got that number, maybe a week ago. And I know that some of the economic numbers are starting to come out, and they're not as atrocious as some of the folks thought. So I'm anxious to see how that works out. There's time for us to have all of this build. June 11th is a little ways away. So there's time for this to come together and look better. As you remember, at the April 23rd meeting, I talked about the possibility of a spending resolution because of the delay of the budget and those kind of things. All of that is looking even more and more promising to do a budget or to do a spending resolution first, as opposed to rush through and complete a budget by the 30th of June. which I think would be a mistake on our part. In fact, our attorney actually recommended that we do a spending resolution first.
Because normally we would be approving next year's budget in this meeting.
Absolutely.
First
Yes, sir.
review of it anyway.
Yes, definitely. That would be normal.
Doing this, explain your spending resolution. I know what it is, but explain how much money you would have access to spend without board approval.
Well, you, the board would be approving the spending resolution, so
correct.
therefore you're approving it.
Would
We
be
can
the
spend up to
question,
1/12 of the
frankly, would we
previous.
would we be approving a certain amount?
You would be approving us to spend up to 1/12 of the previous
That's
year's
what I
budget.
know. So we really don't have, okay.
And it would just be on a monthly basis.
just a
That's why it's
basis
the
until you
112
can pass it on.
aspect of it. Until we had an idea of the revenue and be able to make an actual budget.
So is it the standard practice for being proactive in, looking at this, like, we're not gonna get that money versus being reactive and borrowing the money, out of our general fund or whatever? Is that the standard practice? I don't know. It's my first time.
Standard practice would be for us to have had this already done and already know what we're going to get from the state, so we would be way ahead of the game right now. So normally this is not done because of the coronavirus. We're at least 2 months behind. Now, what I did is took a little bit of initiative to try and figure out what the other districts were going to do. Were they looking at the possibility of fund balance? Were they looking at furlough days? Were they looking at going to a bank and borrowing X millions of dollars? Just trying to figure out what they were doing.
Right.
And there was only 4, including us, 3 total within the CSRA that had even had a conversation about furlough days. The others said absolutely not. They're not even considering it. So that's part of the conversation that we have tomorrow in our CSRA superintendent's meeting. I think for us to consider those things right now is a good conversation for Ms. Kay and I to have. I don't think it's to the board level yet because we don't have enough information to allow you guys to make an educated decision. We need to get more information, put a lot more things on paper that are concrete from the state and say, this is where we're at. Now we need to do this. So I don't think we're ready to even have that conversation, to be fair, at this point.
So this is the steps, the proactive steps we're taking now.
Yes, sir, absolutely.
Yeah. I just don't wanna be reactive.
No,
We could
sir.
have done something now for next year, so.
No, we are already steps ahead of that, trying to figure out what we're gonna do if.
Okay.
And as the conversation was had, it's easier if we set it up with the idea that we're going to pick a number, 10%, 14%, whatever. The state comes back and says, okay, now you only need to cut 5 because we're seeing a lot better numbers. It's easier to add money to a budget than it is take away. So that's part of the conversation that Ms. Kay and I have been going through for the past week.
Ms. Bufford has us in pretty good shape.
Yes, she does. And we could literally take all of that money from fund balance and still be okay for 1 year. The second year would be the concern because you don't want to drop under $1 million.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure, absolutely. Good question.
Question, Mr. Chair.
Yes, ma'am.
We dropped under $1 million this year. Not at my likings, but we did. I think we went down this 600 and something.
That was the original, yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
688,000.
the-
So you guys did drop under, we have before as
We didn't,
well.
actually, that was just budgeted.
Right.
That was budgeted. That wasn't actual numbers.
What was budgeted. My concern is, no, we don't know what this is going to entail. But my concern is that we bite off before we know the facts. Because I know that we didn't spend the entire budget. I know that we should have money left over in pupil services. We should have money left over in Title I. We should have money left over in nutrition and other programs from the feds and the state. I don't see those figures represented in any of the information of these 2 sheets that I have before me tonight. That's my concern. It's hard for me to make a good decision when all information. And it's hard for me to believe that there needs to be a spending resolution, because if it was necessary, you would have supplied me with more information, data, etc., and so on. So that's why I have my question, is because if it's needed, why don't we have the documentation to support those needs? Mr. Chair, thank you.
Okay, just for clarity, we're not doing a spending measure tonight. We're not approving that tonight.
He said he was gonna ask, so that's why.
He said he probably would ask in June. That would be a thing that he
He
would have
told me
to.
today he was gonna ask tonight. We had a conversation.
No, ma'am, I don't think I did.
Yeah, I wrote it down.
But yeah, so that's, I mean, that is the plan. If we don't know the revenue sources and in June, then that's what we would have to do to go forward, to start the next year, so.
What we are asking you to do is approve the amended budget tonight.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but these are the numbers that we do know. Like you said, you do have some estimates, because the buses have stopped running, because of the maintenance, those things that you did try to estimate from the fuel and different things. Everything else is actual.
Yeah, the ones that I know are actually adjusted, like the grants, the QBE, all that stuff we know.
Okay.
Can I ask one more question?
Sure.
Yes.
Ms. Buford, how long you been working, doing this position?
In this
Well,
position,
financial in this,
in this position since 2000. So
2000.
years.
Have you ever been through anything like this before?
Yes.
Okay. At least one time, or just one time?
Well, back in 2008, I think it was, when the economy tanked, we started having to do furloughs. And
Okay.
our fund balance got real low.
Okay.
So, yes, we've had to have a reduction in force. We did furlough days, we did everything to keep going. And then we gradually kind of added back a lot of that, so
Okay.
now we're going into it again.
So you have experience with this, that's what I wanted to make sure of.
Those were really hard
Yeah.
times. I sat right here too, Mr. Heitman. I went through that as well, and there were hard times. And we had to make some tough decisions. That's why I can ask the questions and make the statements that I make. Because been there, done that.
Well, I just wanted to hear from Ms. Buford
I'm
that she
just
had
saying.
experience.
I can correlate what she said, but I have experience too on this end.
Ma'am, what did you
Okay.
say? Excuse me? I didn't hear you. What did you say?
It wasn't important if you didn't hear it. I just said I have experience on this side
Okay,
of the table.
okay. Well, I mean, I've heard your side. I wanted
No,
to hear
you
her
didn't hear
side.
my side.
Well, I sat here and listened the whole time.
No, I'm talking about, you didn't ask me about 2008. You had no, you didn't know that I was here.
Okay, in front of us, we have the tentative budget, or I'm sorry, the amended budget. And we need to approve this or disapprove it.
Make a motion to approve.
Okay? You have a motion by Mr. Madison, second by Mr. Heidemann. All in favor? Opposed? It's 4-1. Okay, next on the agenda is the adult meal price increases.
As I think the board is aware, in this coming school year, the food service will go through a review. This is a new review that looks at a lot of different aspects of food service, but one of those things is meal prices. And they look at the cost, what they call a per plate cost. As they looked at, or as the food service department looked at per plate cost, they were fine for student meals. They were a little bit under for per plate cost for adult meals. So what they are recommending is to increase the adult meals, leave the student meals alone, increase the adult meals for breakfast from $1.50 up to $2.25, and for lunch from $3.25 up to $3.75. This would put us in that window that the state considers acceptable, so as they do their review, we will not get a finding for being under the plate cost.
And that is a formula that they have, that we're required to, as you said, to be in
In
certain
that
windows?
range, yes, sir. And they base it on the average meal cost per plate, what we charge, and what is served. And we don't get a reimbursement for an adult meal like we do a student meal, which that helps adjust the plate cost as well.
Can you see the numbers before you? Any questions?
Fair question. Does a student, like a student eats a lot, buy an adult meal?
No, sir. They
Okay.
buy a regular student meal and then they can go back and get what they call à la carte. So they would get an additional sandwich or additional whatever entree.
Okay.
So that's a totally different arrangement. Adult meals are only served to adults.
Could you refresh our memory as to what the student lunches?
Again, I don't remember off the top of my head. I want to say it was $225, I think. I'm not positive. Do you remember, Ms. Barksdale?
Moms
$225? I think that's right.
$2.25,
I think that's right.
and that's for lunch? Do you know what breakfast is?
I want to say it's like $1 or 95 cents, something like that.
I don't think so.
Does anybody know what
Is it less than
lunch
that?
breakfast?
I don't remember.
Well, I don't feel bad that I don't remember.
No, we can't, none of us can remember.
Ma'am?
None of us can remember.
I can't even. But it's below $2.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, for breakfast.
thank you.
Student.
You're gonna be the hero. All right, any other questions on the adult meal prices? All right, we need to vote on this?
One question, I'm sorry. When you say adult, is that for people who come in, or is that for our staff, our teachers?
Yes.
Both.
Oh, we going up on our teachers' meals?
Yeah, adult meal prices, yes, ma'am.
Y'all give? Give? I thought they ate free.
Okay.
I'll make a motion.
I have a motion by Mr. Heitman to approve the adult meal price increase. Second by Mr. Massey. All in favor? Unanimous. Next on the agenda is the third grade grading system.
Currently, our K through 3 grading system is standards-based. Ms. Arthur and Ms. Goldman have been at the elementary school for a year, although it seems like a couple of minutes. They've been there for a whole year. And they have been analyzing third grade, analyzing a lot of the whole school, but specifically third grade because third grade has an end of grade test. That end of grade test dovetails more into a numeric grading system than it does a standards-based grading system. But I am not going to sit before you and act like I am an expert on elementary school. So I'm going to ask our elementary principal to stand forward and show off her excellence and expertise and tell us why we want to do that.
Okay, I will share. Let me just say, Ms. Coleman and I have enjoyed this school year, and when we went in, we just kind of sat back and thought, we're just gonna watch, see what's going on here in the building. Mrs. Acock and Mrs. Client did a great job with the curriculum and especially reading. And so there wasn't a whole lot of things that just jumped out at us as needing, to look at closer. But one of the things that kept coming up in conversation with teachers, with Mr. Williams, the Director of Teaching and Learning, and with us was third grade. And in K2, the students, the standards there are basically fundamental skills. knowing beginning sounds, knowing beginning, middle, and end. Those things can be graded pretty easily with the standards-based report card and the rubrics that we have in place. The students get a 4, which is exceeds, a 3, which meets, a 2, which is progressing toward the standard, or a 1, not meeting the standard. So it's pretty cut and dry. If a child is supposed to know 100 sight words, if they know them, then they get it. But when you get in 3rd grade, it's a little bit different. They take all those fundamental skills that they learned in K through 2, and they apply them throughout the entire year to learn to read for information. So they're taking all of that and applying it differently. They take the math skills and they have to start problem solving and doing that kind of thing. And in 3rd grade, they take the EOG, just like 4th through 8th grade. 4th through 8th grade uses traditional grading, however 3rd grade did not. And we got, I guess a few weeks ago, we found out that the state is going to do something called Beacon benchmarks next school year that we as a school system are going to participate in. And basically what that is, the kids in grades 3 through 8 will take a benchmark test each 9 weeks. And after the test, we'll get the results back, just like we do for EOG, so we'll know what our students know and what they don't know. And so our teachers can use that information along with all the progress monitoring things that we have in place at our school to make a determination, for instruction, what the children need. And I don't know how to word this politically correct, but I'm just going to put it out here. Mr. Williams and I have had numerous conversations about just the standardization of the rubrics. What does a 4 look like in 3rd grade? What does a 3 look like? What does a 2 look like? What does a 1 look like? We've had those conversations with our teachers, and it's very hard in 3rd grade because main idea is not only taught, 9 weeks, it's throughout the entire year. So we've had those conversations, and kind of what we came up with was a numeric grading system anyway, and then just kind of converting it back over to this, the 4, 3, 2, 1. So, we just feel like that keeping it consistent in grades 3 through 8 with the benchmarks that we have in place in EOG and keeping the grading system the same, it would be better. We also felt that looking at it in K2, we need to look at our report cards. The report card, standard-based report card, started out for one of the grades being 4 pages. And Mrs. Aycock and Ms. Clyde worked and narrowed it down to, the basic, I guess you could call them, the big standards. And our teachers are, get together, they look at student work, but we still need some help. And they do too, all of us, sitting together at a table and having a conversation about student work to look at our rubric and say, okay, a 4 is this. And giving the teachers samples and us as well, everybody grading it and then sharing what you graded it and coming to a consensus to what a 4, 3, 2, and a 1 really looks like, and modifying the rubric so that we can better serve our students. So that's the whole premise behind it. And when I talked to Dr. Lane about it, it is board policy. Let's see, I wrote it down. It's IHA, our grading system. So it would have to come before you, and you would have to look at the policy and decide if that's something that you would like to honor. I think it would be beneficial to us as a school. And so I did some research as well. I went around, I called Wilkes County. Wilkes County in 3rd grade does traditional grading. Oglethorpe does traditional grading. McDuffie does traditional grading in 3rd. Columbia County, it depends on the school. I didn't call all of the elementary schools in Columbia County, but where I have contacts and people I know, K2 is standards-based. One of them had 3rd grade standards-based, but they're even looking at going back to traditional. I called 2 of my friends in Richmond County, and they're traditional. Lake Oconee is traditional, so I didn't just, get with Ms. Goldman and say, this is what we're doing. Kind of checked it out in other districts and to see how they felt about it. And so most of them, you find a mixture, like I said, in the larger systems. But for the overall systems like us, they have traditional grading in third grade. So we would like for you to consider it, and just, move forward with it, if that's something that you would consider.
As far as, excuse me, as far as the policy IHA, if the board decides to go to this recommendation and vote for this recommendation, we would come back next month and present the changes to IHA. I included IHA in your package so you would know what we were talking about.
And I'll, since you have it in your package, when you start looking at it, I'm gonna confess, Dr. Light did give us this policy back in 2017 and said, read it. Okay, so I got it, I read it, the middle school part. Should have read the entire thing. I did not. And as we were looking over it, reviewing it, we realized second and third grade were eliminated from the entire policy anyway. So it needs to be looked at. And I told him I would take full responsibility for that because he instructed us to read the entire thing, and I read my part. Just being honest with you, transparent. But now my part is the elementary school, so we need to look at it anyway.
Obviously, we would upgrade it either way,
Yes,
but
sir.
if the board approves of this tonight, then we would upgrade it and provide that at the next meeting.
And go through the process.
Any other questions from Ms. Arthur or Dr. Light? Thank you, Ms.
Okay,
Arthur.
thank you.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion on that,
Okay,
that we approve the third grade grading.
as presented by Ms. Arthur.
Yes.
Do we have a second? Second by Ms. Barksdale. All in favor? Unanimous.
Okay, thank you all.
Next, we have 8 policies for review. I'll let you just talk through each.
Okay. B, 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 E is board member compensation and expenses. B, C, B, A, board meeting time and place. G, A, K, A, reduction in force. G, B, A, extended year CTAE project/supervision. I, E, D, scheduling for instruction. J, G, student welfare. J, G, F, G, student accidents. And K, B, public information program. All of those currently are set for review.
Any questions on any of those in review? Okay, we have 1 for revision, that is JGH, food service management.
The only change to JGH is the state has made an adjustment on the number of hours that a food service worker or manager, at the very bottom of that first page, Michael, if you would. It's gone from managers from 12 hours to 10 hours, and in-service training annual for all other staff, a minimum of 6. So we have to reflect those changes in our policies, which is one of the many reasons we do these reviews. So this one would be up for change.
Okay, thank you, sir. Next is our superintendent's reports.
On the meeting that we had back on the 23rd, we were asked to come forward with an online learning plan if we ever had a pandemic again, or if we had to go forward with online learning as school started at the beginning of next year. We have done that. We were also asked, we were also asked how many of our children do not have an internet connection across our county. Now, this has been an odd situation because it is very sporadic. Some do not have internet connection by choice. It's not that it's not available, it's by choice. Some are making that choice whether to eat or have internet connection. Some are making the choice that they just don't want the internet in their house. They still don't have the connection in their house. Some don't have it available. But on average, through the entire district, we are looking at 18% of our children do not have an internet connection. Now, the question leads to, what do we do if we have to do total online learning? And obviously, we want to introduce new material if we do online learning during the school year to start the school year, or in the middle if it happens again. I spent some time with our technology department again, talked about the Chromebooks. We actually have 1,600 Chromebooks in our possession with the school district. We have 1,037 children on our roll right now. So not only do we have one for everybody, we have some extras in case one breaks. Miss Arthur had one this summer that somehow got wet, was what we heard. We have to be able to replace those the next day if that happens, not we'll order you one and see you next year. So we have that capability, and that's great. The kids that do not have internet connection, what we would do is we would provide jump drives. We would exchange jump drives. You can take this Chromebook home. I did it myself at my house. You can take this Chromebook home, turn it on, plug in the jump drive. You can view a video, you can view a PowerPoint presentation, you can view whatever's on that jump drive and never ever be connected to the internet. After you do that and see the new material that is presented, you could complete the homework or whatever assignment is there, and then you can turn that back in. What we would do with those children is we would exchange jump drives. We would exchange jump drives. Let's say that Mr. Heitman's house doesn't have connectivity. We would exchange jump drives with you to provide that for your age child, and then they would turn material in. So it would be a little bit of back and forth. And we would use basically the same setup as we're doing for lunches right now. If we come up with a better setup, then we'll use that. But our online learning would make a whole lot of sense to continue to use Chromebooks and just use the jump drives. We also found an item that allows us to duplicate a jump drive. One jump drive duplicates to 6, to 10, to 12. You can go as high as 36, depending on how many you want to do. That being said, it speeds up the process. Now, for the K2 children that have a whole lot of face-to-face, a whole lot of teacher viewing, a teacher interaction, that teacher may be videoing themselves doing that lesson. Now, our teachers would have to have online or office hours, so to speak, so those 18% of the families that don't have internet connection can make a phone call and say, Mrs. Jones, I don't get this. What do I do? They can help us with this. So that office hour and then the other hours of planning would take up an 8-hour day very quickly. And the 5 of us sat in my office and went through this plan, which you see up there in front of you right now. Now, I'm not going to sit before you and say I know everything. You 5 are extremely intelligent. What did I leave out? What did I miss? Help me. And we hear crickets.
I can't hear you. You go ahead.
Okay, yeah, so we're going to purchase a resource. We've been researching resources that can deliver teaching materials to students. We found a resource that require use federal funds. We have that it's going to have instructions via PowerPoint. That's our primary resource we have for pretty much most of all our academic course subjects and some of our foreign language classes. And this will allow, first, it be standardized. So it doesn't matter if a student has internet or not, it's the same presentation. Now, if a student does not get a Chromebook, you can print that PowerPoint and it's going to be the same information. It won't be interactive. But this will allow us to teach to new material. Unlike this time we had an issue, everybody was in the same situation. A few districts, because they have internet, they will teach new material. So in this plan, we have it where teachers will have to set up office hours. So teachers can be available to help students. And then we're working on how to do the assessments and things like this. So this will allow us, and we'll have the jump drives already preloaded once we order material. So algebra 1, for middle school, it'll be 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade jump drive. For other grades, it'll be, high school will be algebra 1, geometry, so that student have to get possibly 4 jump drives for mainly the core subject areas. So it'll allow, again, regardless of if a student has internet. Now, we're still watching how we can help increase internet access, but right now, we can do this, and once we order it, we can start this tomorrow if needed. So our main plan right now is to make sure that we can serve everyone equitably with the same instructional material, regardless if they have internet. Now, if you have internet, it can be delivered through a Google Classroom, which students are already used to, all the way up from first grade up. Well, second grade primarily, they're used to using these materials. And so again, we have teachers available with office hours. Also, we talked about evening office hours. Because again, if I'm at work during the day, how can I help my child if I want to ask questions? So we're trying to figure out how we can legally, no, we can force someone to have evening office hours, but encourage and ask teachers to also set up evening times so they can be available to help parents with phone calls, Zoom, or whatever session we'll have. So again, purchasing this, it goes from the materials we're purchasing, goes 3rd through 12th grade. K through 2, as Dr. Light said, is something that you can do through PowerPoints, working with your kid on reading, working with your kid on basic math, working with your student on learning vocabulary words. But 3 through 12 is the primary resource we're purchasing with title federal funds that will allow us to provide instructional material. Because we have things that can provide right now with internet. But the problem is, what about the 18% that don't have internet? So, and others who may have internet, but it's spotty. Doesn't work that well when you stream. So our plan is to allow that internet won't be the issue in terms of being able to present material to students. Now again, if we out of school for a few days, how do we, how we get the grades and those are things. So this is something that we can quickly begin and plan. And as this summer, elementary teachers are working, and it's a resource available for all teachers in their academic subject areas. That way, all Algebra 1 students can get the same lesson. So it won't matter what teacher I got and have, and it also helps our teachers so they won't be trying to stream or create their own videos if they don't want to and not comfortable. If you look at some people streaming their own church services, you can see a big quality in internet and the people able to deliver. But this right here will help standardize it for all. That's our primary goal, making sure, knowing the internet is a big issue, being able to get it, even with the free internet companies, they don't serve Lincoln County.
So these zip drives, will they have the entire semester or just 1 week or 1 month? What kind of lesson, what kind of length of plans will
It
be
will
on
be
each?
all, and then they will get the lesson plan from the teacher and know which lesson to go to.
Okay.
So we can't, so if we had an emergency, we want to be able to get 300 flat drive and all of a sudden put split lessons. So for those who have internet, we can send them specifically, you will need these lessons. But the students who don't have internet, they get the flash drive, then they're going to have to look through the plan and they can know it's going to be labeled
Okay.
lesson 3.6.
But we don't have to swap them out every other week or anything?
No, they're keeping
Okay,
it'll be,
great.
so once you get it for your 4 classes, and you can't edit the PowerPoint and do things, so they don't have to like get it back every week to get new things. It'll be preloaded with the entire year worth of material. And we decided probably for storage, 1 per subject area, and plus if you're taking 4 classes, this student's 4 classes will be different from Mrs. Barksdale's students or from Julianne if she was taking class on campus. So we just have to, that's the easiest way for high school. They may get 4 or 3 because they won't get 1 for PE. It's not every class. PE, get a piece of paper, tell you exercises to do, or whatever process. But this is primarily for the academic core classes.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
What would make a parent do that with a flash drive and not sign their children up for Georgia Virtual School where they have a live teacher in front of them with students all over the state of Georgia that they can interact with the teacher, ask questions, the teacher can see all of her students or his students? Why would we not have teachers teaching? I don't understand that. I don't understand why we have to buy, it's difficult to talk through this, but there's a system in Georgia, I think it's called Georgia Virtual Schools or something like that you can sign up for. And I know that some people in this county and others, their children are part, they have a graduation every year in Atlanta, and they have proms and all of that. So why would they stay with us where they're getting a junk drive and
Well,
not a real teacher teaching them the subject matter? online is fine for college students and older adults. But online, for kids who are trying to learn math and science so they can go to college or tech school or whatever they decide to do in life, I think we should come up with something a little bit better than a jump drive. I think if we're going to have teachers who are working, why can't they sit in their classrooms or in their house, it doesn't matter, and teach a class to their students? Y'all make me understand, because right now I'm not understanding.
Well,
And
correct me if I'm wrong, but the zip drive is for those who don't have internet.
That's correct.
So Georgia Virtual wouldn't help them either.
Well, yeah, because they put out those computers with the vans on them like corporations do, and it does reach. Because I know some who have used them and they mail them.
If they don't
They
have
send them the
internet,
computers.
but if it
They
doesn't
have a
have
hotspot on.
internet,
Well, I guess they get them internet, because I know people here that have had it and gone successfully. So,
The teachers would be presenting lessons to everybody online except the 18%.
okay.
What we were
Well, see,
talking
that
about for
I
the
get.
jump drive was the 18% folks.
Okay.
We want
That I
them to
didn't
get good
understand.
information.
So you're gonna have regular classes for the 81%,
Yes, ma'am.
82%.
Yes, ma'am.
So they will have a teacher.
They would have online internet connection to where they would be interacting with that teacher, yes.
through Google Classroom is what you were saying.
Real
Correct.
classroom.
Right. Or video, the whole thing, right?
So those children without internet access, if they had a relative or someone with internet, they could still get the Chromebook and have access to the classes.
No question.
Yeah, they won't be denied the Google Classroom. It just, they can't log in until they get to the internet. Everybody in the class get it, and I think we talked about teachers will do some Zoom sessions as some of them were doing this prior time, which you can do with your phone. It won't require a little easier internet connection. I think you said something about Georgia Virtual and the Odyssey where we already have.
We
But
already have those.
what's the downside of it? You gotta pay for it.
Well, Georgia Virtual is $500 per kid. And Odyssey Ware, we pay for it as a district for a certain number of licenses.
Well, the program I'm talking about, they received the FTE money for that student. There are several parents that I know that's from here but live in Richmond County and Columbia County now. And she's had 3 children go through the program and graduate from high school. And they use, from what I understand, they use the FTE money, because that's how they count it. I may have the name wrong, it may not be Georgia Virtual, but it's Georgia some.
Yes, it's separate. They're all, yeah. 'Cause we get the FTEs for our Georgia Virtual kids.
Right, so you know what I'm
Private
talking,
cyber,
what's the
yeah.
name of it?
I think it's
Georgia Cyber Academy.
I think.
That, it used to have another name and then they changed it, and I'm not sure what the new name, it used to be Georgia, like homeschool or something, but it's not that, it's something else.
Ms. Freeman, they were talking about K2. Our K2 teachers will actually make the videos as if they were in the classroom, and they'll have office hours so they can answer those questions for the children too, with the parent, because it's hard to have a kindergartner in front of a computer without some adult supervision.
Yeah, I didn't say kindergarten or second, but
Yeah.
I have a 3rd grade grandson in Cobb County who is still doing school as we speak. And his teacher is on with him 3-4 times a week. She still has parent-teachers conferences with the parents. And he does everything from write the paragraphs to the math, the science, the social studies, all of it. And it takes us 6 to 8 hours because we all, but you know what I'm saying, it's long, but she's always available. And she does the Zoom, I think 3 times a week with them. So
Our
yeah, so
teachers
they
are-
take the other 2 days for whatever.
Our teachers have been doing that through Hangout and Zoom. And right now, for example, all this week, my pre-K teachers are having Zoom conferences or phone conferences with every student they taught,
Right.
doing their end of the year narrative summary. So the teachers have been working from home a lot.
And
they-
just like you were
they've done a
saying, the
great job.
extracurricular stuff, like the art teacher, they had to do art projects. And they had to, you know, show their art projects, and, you know, it was the first time I saw the pottery out of flour and water, yeah. And, the PE, they did PE, and that was a day they were on Zoom, and they had to do their little jumping jacks or whatever. So they kept the kids engaged, and what I liked about it was that even though he was out of school, he got to see his friends, they got to talk, they got to ask questions, and that interaction with the students, asking different questions, helped his learning process even better, like he was in a real classroom. So that's the part that I
Yes, ma'am.
like the most, because children ask questions to help other children that they think they too shy or afraid to ask. Does that make sense? Yeah.
And that's exactly what we talked about when we looked at this as a proactive measure, hoping we never have to use it, but as a proactive measure, and it's something that we know hopefully will be temporary if we have to put it in place if this and when this comes back around. But the teachers would do Zoom lessons like they're doing. Our students this time did actual projects that they actually brought in when they brought their Chromebooks books back, and we had all that art and PE going on the whole time. So.
Well, see, I asked the questions that I never got that answer,
Oh, yes,
so
ma'am.
thank you for sharing that. I did not know,
Yes, ma'am.
and I have asked. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions on the plans? Okay,
I have one other thing. Skills USA this time of year is normally presenting to us how well they have done. Unfortunately, Skills USA, considering the coronavirus, was stopped, and it was changed to online. Our children continued to excel even in online. Welding sculpture, Connor Walls received a 3rd in welding sculpture. Metalworking display, Lincoln High School as a team got 3rd. And sheet metal, Cody Duran got 2nd for sheet metal for Lincoln High School, and I wanted to share that as well.
all right.
That's all I had tonight.
Need a motion to go into executive session? A motion by Ms. Barstow, second by Mr. Massey.
We're here back there.
Yeah, call our meeting back to order. The superintendent has recommended, and I make a motion that we hire Justin Hornsby to the course position at Lincoln County High School for the 2020-2021 calendar year.
So moved.
Have a second by Ms. Freeman. All in favor? Unanimous? Now I need a motion to adjourn from Mr. Madison, second by Ms. Freeman. Unanimous? Thank you.
Thank you all.